Hi, everybody. I'm Tenessa Audette. Welcome to Tenessa Talks. On this episode, we're going to discuss identity politics. Before we get into it, make sure that you like, subscribe, follow, and give us that 5-star review. Hope you enjoy the show. All right, we are back with a new episode and a new co-host. And so, as always, we're really trying to communicate to the American public about how the American political system works, how you can engage and actually be inspired and not discouraged by, political commentary. And as you know, we are experiencing something probably in America that if you are a studier of history, has happened before because great awakenings have happened in the past in our country's history. But for those that are sort of engaging and are not nerds that nerd out on history all the time, this is sort of like what exactly is happening? Has this happened before? And how do we navigate an assassination of a 31-year-old young man who is a father of 2 very young children and is out there debating in the public square and he's assassinated? Like, what does that look like? What does it look like when a political slogan of Make America Great has become a slur? What in the world is a Christian nationalist? So there's just all of these things that I think are coming at the public in general. And there are people like yourself, like my good friend Christin here, that are asking these questions. They're asking them of their electives. They're just asking them of their friends. And so I have invited Christin here today, a Christian, a mom, a patriot, and we're going to kind of get into some of those types of questions that really speak to your heart. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and get us started.
Yeah, as you said, I am a Christian. I am a wife and a mom of 2 teenage boys.
Oh.
So that's a fun life.
Yeah.
I am also an ordained pastor and have spent many years in ministry and talking and working with believers. And yes, I love my country. I am grateful to live here and grateful for what this country allows us to do. So, I hear these terms in the news, Christian nationalism. And so maybe there are others out there who think, well, I'm a Christian and I love my country, right?
Yeah.
So does that make me a Christian nationalist or is that something different? Why don't you tell us what that actually means in the broader scope of when the newscasters are telling us about it or politicians are saying it? How are they using that term?
So you're saying you don't have a Christian nationalist flag? And
I don't even know what that is.
Right? Your license plate doesn't say Christian national. Yeah. Yes.
No.
Yeah. Right? I mean, you would think that, we're all marching on this. So I think people fall into sort of 2 categories. There are the people that have no idea what Christian nationalism means. And they're like, yeah, sure, I'm a Christian. I'm a patriot. Yeah, sure. I love my country. I love my nation. Why not? Like, sure, I am. And then there's those of us that know exactly what that means. And we're like, no, absolutely no. And don't say that. Don't say that you're that. So I feel like, people kind of fall into 2 camps. And so really, if you try to go find out the definition of Christian nationalism, you're going to find many different definitions. But I think that the determining negative factor that's included in that is that they believe that Christian, like the Bible, should dominate, should be preferred. Christianity should be preferred over religions and over people in America, and that Christians should dominate the political system and have it basically be a theocracy. But I saw one definition that said, I think it was in Wikipedia, that said it's a form of theocracy, but you're allowed to have non-Christians running it. You're like, well, how would that work?
Right.
So.
Okay, so let's define some terms.
Yes.
Define theocracy.
Well, a theocracy would basically mean something like akin to like Islam. So you have Sharia law. So based on the Quran, your policies, your law is based on what the Quran says is legal, not legal. And so that would be sort of a theocracy where you would have a religion that dictates law. So everything is up against, and you basically have people like either maybe like the Pope, like the Vatican City. That would be a theocracy because the Pope runs it. And obviously he is in the catechism framework. And so that is a technical theocracy, how that is run. So you have a clear definition of what a theocracy is. There is no clear definition of what Christian nationalism is. It seems like anytime that you have a term that's used that is not defined by the people themselves, then it's a slur.
Okay.
I mean, they're basically calling you a name, and you don't even realize that because it's not terms that are negative in and of themselves. If you look up the word nationalism, which is basically like a preference of your own nation, which I would think every nation has a preference for their own nation, and which would ensure its survival. But if you look up nationalism, every single country is going to have a different iteration of what that country's national identity would be.
Sure.
And if you look over time, it would be different based on what the needs of that country are at any given moment. Woodrow Wilson, did an America First speech, and he was talking about foreign wars, and he was talking about, policy, international policy, and Warren Harding did a speech on America First. So there have been other non-religious right-wing presidents. Biden did a speech on America First. He was talking about domestic policies. Obama did speeches on America First, and he was talking about domestic policies being the number one priority, not war, not foreign policy. Like, let's bring it back to America. Let's bolster our unions and that America First kind of idea. So the concept of being a nationalist is not a terrible thing. I think that it gets equated to Nazism. So there's big leaps to.
Yeah, tell me how we get there.
Yeah, because you have the National Socialists, and you have those types of movements that basically taint these words.
Yeah.
And they're basically used in a pejorative sense towards people on the right. And so if you look up, again, if you're a Christian, you're like, what's wrong with that? And if you're believe in your country, you're like, what's wrong with that? And It's like when you realize, well, this term in and of itself only came into existence after January 6th. Like, the word may have been used here or there, but it's not a movement. It's not an organization. There's no Christian Nationalist Society of America. There is a Communist Society of America. There's a Socialist Society of America, but there is no Christian nationalists where they are defining who they are. And therefore, we can judge based on who they have said that they are. That doesn't exist.
So you're saying that it is actually a label
Yes.
put on people that are not in the group.
Right.
By people outside the group.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's, I'm sure, never going to have any issues with defining what that is.
Because it never has before,
No,
right?
never.
Right.
Right.
Those are derogatory terms.
They are. And I think the purpose of that is to sort of strike fear that other people, other than Christians that love their country, should fear Christians that love their country irrationally, because they're not saying that. There is no banner, there's no flag, but people, now that they're saying that often, they're asking people, they're describing sort of a value system where, of course, a Christian's going to say, of course I value Christianity, and of course I value the fact that our founding documents, our Constitution, was founded on a lot of Judeo-Christian principles from the Bible. That doesn't make you a Christian nation, but it does make you a nation that was founded on Judeo-Christian principles.
Yeah.
In fact, what we are is a constitutional republic. So our allegiance is to a constitution. Obviously, my devotion is to the Lord, but my political system is a constitutional republic. It's not a democracy. The founders did a very, very detailed and strong argument against democracies because they always lead in death and tyranny and mob rule. And so they knew why they didn't want to be a democracy. They wanted to be a constitutional republic. And so that law of the land is the Constitution. And the fact is that it was influenced by Christian values. Now, very easily you could say, oh, that makes us a Christian nation. And it's like, well, kind of in its history, but not demonstrably, because clearly it was a room of Christians. I think, 99%, there might have been one that wasn't a Christian as we would all describe them, But they did create a country. They did create a political system that is not a theocracy, that protected all religions. And the only reason why you can even have this debate and slander Christians in a Christian nation, that's air quotes, like if you're claiming that's what we think, you would never be able to do those things.
Yeah.
So the fact is that because it's a religion of tolerance and of inclusion, you can bash it, and that's okay. You get the free will to come to conclusions based on your own journey and not mine.
Yeah.
And that is the gospel. Jesus is not going to force you to believe him. He's not going to be your ruler and force you into obedience. He's going to give you opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to learn lessons, to decide, to fall, to get back up. There's just a process, and you can look at people in the Bible that, and I think with good scrutiny, other people do, and say like, well, that wasn't a good person, and you guys like them, and it's like, well, we like them because they weren't a good person, and the Lord didn't give up on them and gave them chance after chance after chance, and then they learned and grew even in failure and became better. And don't we all want that? Because we all want the ability to fail and have a second chance. We love second chances.
We do.
Well,
for me, maybe not.
I mean, I love second, third, fourth, fifth. Give me all the extras.
Well, yes, and I think that's even when we see that in politics, like I want a second chance because I know I'm going to mess up. I know I'm not going to get it all right. But I find that like in the political world, you mess up and you're out. Like, how do we be a people of grace within politics and give people second chances?
Yeah, I feel like the right doesn't really get a lot of second chances as much as the left does. And I think it's been this really interesting, corner that Christians maybe sometimes back themselves into. Before we were, labeled and smeared as Christian nationalists, we were smeared as the religious right or the Christian code, the religious, whatever, these other terms that they've used, and the moral majority. And I think it's like, if you're going to come from this stance of my Christianity is my highest identity when it comes to politics, because for me, while personally I am a Christian, when I step into politics, my job is to not prefer any religion. What is my ruler, and I don't mean that in like a biblical sense, but sort of like the authority is the Constitution. I have to adhere to the Constitution.
Yeah.
Now, of course, someone's going to say like, but what if the Constitution violates? You're like, I get that. But there's a framework for disagreement in policy.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of believers are going to sit there and say, wait a minute, we're not a theocracy, but I think what you talked about having a government run from the principles of my Christian religion and Bible is actually where I want to go, what I want to do, and that's what I'm arguing for.
Mm-hmm.
And so you say you're a Christian in politics, but that isn't necessarily you have a broader perspective maybe than just Christianity in politics. So how do we function as believers who want to uphold our principles?
Yeah.
In a government that isn't defined by that?
Well, I would say that there aren't a ton of policy prescriptions in the Bible. So I don't want any of the political systems that are demonstrated in the Bible. So I can't just go there and be like, how did your constitutional republic work? And let's model it after that. So technically there really isn't. There are principles on character, on integrity, and a lot of there are some structures of how the tribes were, how local rule worked, and you had this jurisdiction. We took a lot of those types of things, and also just the value and the dignity of human beings, that God says that all people are included. And honestly, what's interesting about Scripture is that there isn't this identity politic. There is no Jew or Gentile.
Right.
That strips you of these artificial identities. There is no male or female.
Right.
So the things that sort of divide us on earth don't divide us in the kingdom of God. And it's sort of like, okay, so that's interesting. I shouldn't discriminate against people based on their religion, based on their sex, based on immutable characteristics that they have no control over, which is where they're born, how they're, like who they're born to. And like, so those types of principles are very fundamental as to how we did our system of government. But it isn't a policy prescription
Right.
because it doesn't, we don't have the rules for the internet in scripture. So
Right.
it's like we have some value systems about human beings. Whereas if you look throughout history and how other people created governments for themselves and structured themselves. And, if you look at the sociology of those types of things, it was very tribal or because it's a lot of ethnocentric because it's
Well, and that's how it's set up.
we live near each other. You look just like me. You're an ancestor of me, whatever. And that's how that was set up. So when you have something like America, it's just very different because it's this melting pot of all of these cultures, all of these, like, how do you actually bring them together?
Right.
And have a value very similar to no Jew or Gentile, no male. You know what I mean? It's like, well, that's an interesting concept. And if the creator created us, probably has some good ideas of how we're all going to get along and what's a good way to do that, and we're going to adopt those. However, when it comes to how do you make policy prescriptions and how do you actually govern with so many different types of people, then we have some rules that we're going to set, and we're going to limit what the government can do.
So tell me what those rules are and how it works.
Oh, gosh.
Or, what level?
Well, no, that's like
but
that's a 17-hour dissertation in a class, and you go get a degree for that.
Reframe.
Okay, get
So, and this is when I first met you, one of the things you said that I loved was you can't just know the Bible to be in politics. You actually have to know the Constitution.
Right.
Just like you wouldn't want your surgeon to be a really good Bible scholar. You want them to know anatomy and physiology, right? Like,
yeah, you have to have that subject matter.
You have to have the subject matter. So,
like, could you imagine going into business and being like, I just need to know scripture. Yeah. I don't need to know zoning laws. I don't need to know what permits I need to get. But I'm a Christian, and so, I just know scripture, so I know the best way to do this. It's like, well, you live under the laws of the land.
Yes.
And we're not trying to say, oh, laws don't matter because I'm a Christian. It's like, no, of course, we want to live in society. We have social contracts, and we have laws that we live in, and we agree to this.
Yes. So help me.
Yeah.
Because I don't really want to study the Constitution. I admit it.
Sure.
Like maybe a cursory reading, a basic understanding. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you definitely.
But this is not my field.
You definitely don't want to read the California Constitution because it's massive.
It's very large.
It's massive.
Yes. Yeah. So, as a believer, who really, what we've been told all along is we got to get God into government. We got to get our Christian values and our principles in there, which is not what you're saying. Like, so how?
Well, they're already there.
They're already there. So how do I, as a believer, interact responsibly in honoring my faith, but also honoring my country? How does that work?
I have found what's been helpful for myself and for the people that I have taught, and when this comes up, is to rightly understand what role God played in government.
Yes.
Right. So it's like going and reading the Declaration of Independence. It's a letter to the king. That declaration was a letter, and they sent it to the king declaring their independence from his rule. And they were going to set up a new government, which came later. They had a couple iterations before they got to what they got to. But that first declaration, I think, is important because it is talking about your rights come from God, that we have certain inalienable rights, and that we are rejecting this idea that the government or a king or an emperor or a senate, a group of people, wise leaders, experts, whatever you want to call it, are going to tell me what I can and can't do in life and how much I will be able to achieve in life. We're going to say that those rights, that level of dignity, that level of equal playing field and equality comes from God. Yeah. And you don't give it to me, and you can't take it away from me. I think rightly understanding the role that Christianity, what is that 39% of Judeo-Christian values? Go do that research and don't do it on ChatGPT or Grok, because what those systems do is pull from what's available.
Right.
Right? and then tell you that this is the answer. And if you know the answer and you're trying to articulate the answer, that's a great use of that tool to help you articulate your point you already know, maybe. But as far as searching for information, if you go to the internet, if it's published anywhere,
Yeah.
you should be able to find that. And it's not a definitive answer. You're going to go search through and you're going to know who wrote that, who said that, when did they say that. You're going to have some basics of research to understand where that bias is, as opposed to when you do search on AI, you think that is the definitive answer, but it isn't.
Right.
It's a perspective.
Did you just say that libraries are not actually out of date and we still should know
I
how
love
to use
libraries.
I do too.
Yes,
Libraries,
I
love
do
books.
love a good dictionary. What's so fascinating is just I've had to go back and look through dictionaries, before like the 1920s to find out how things were defined, because lots of effort was put into redefining terms. And so a lot of our, I think, misunderstanding of terms, like the word democracy, and that comes from the fact that they've changed the meaning. And you're like, okay, so I'm arguing with people that are just going to a dictionary. That's fair.
So then tell us, what does democracy actually mean and how are we using it today?
Well, democracy doesn't mean republic. So they're trying to say that these are interchangeable terms, but
Define that for me.
they're not. So yeah, so like democracy really just means like direct rule. So like you vote. So democracy is people are voting for things.
Okay.
And in a constitutional republic, the law is not the people. The law is the Constitution that the people have agreed, right? That they've agreed that these should be the boundary lines of government. We should limit what government does, and the federal government should do this. Every other thing that's going to possibly be legislated is going to come from the states and the people. We have the right. Ultimately, every right is mine, but I'm giving my consent to be ruled in a certain way, limited ways in the federal government by the Constitution, and then by the states, by who we elect and the laws that they pass for that state. And if the state doesn't do it, and if the federal government isn't doing it, that is my right. All on my own, and it falls on me to fulfill that responsibility because it's my right.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So the republic was so the Constitution is probably the most important part. We argued Republic and Democrat, but really it's the Constitution that's the law of the land.
So I should study the Constitution.
I think it's probably more important to understand when people say democracy, 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 what they're trying to say is popular opinion, popular opinion, popular opinion. And when you own the airwaves and you decide what people are talking about, of course you could manipulate public sentiment because it's what you're talking about.
Okay.
And if I start asking people, are you a Christian nationalist? And they're like, am I Christian? Do I believe in my country? Yeah.
Sure.
What's so fascinating is in my research on Christian nationalism, I looked up like a poll that they did, right? And I looked at the questions. Not one of the 5 questions said, are you a Christian? Do you identify as a Christian nationalist? They didn't even ask them that directly. But they asked questions in such a way that they're like, this is what Christian nationalism is if you believe these things. And you're like, but you didn't even ask them if they identify as that or if they even know what that is. But you've assessed if you've decided these questions qualify somebody. And they're questions like, do you believe that Christianity, that the Constitution like has something to do with Christianity or is defined by God or something to that effect? And you're like, well, it is.
Yes.
So it's not if I think it is.
It is.
Like the Declaration of Independence makes it very clear that our rights come from God and not government. So it's like, I'm not reading into that. It says that. So I'm not telling you my opinion. I'm reading you the historical document. So the founders get to define for themselves what these things mean, but you have people that want to label this identity politic world where you have certain, instead of I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I believe in these ideals, and I don't agree with everything with Republicans, but I mostly do, so I'm a Republican. I don't agree with everything that the Democrats do, but this issue is here, so this is where I'm at.
Right.
So, we have that. We know what those things are. But the rest of this whole study of identity politics that came up in the 70s and, this movement was to say identity politics really is around this power struggle and this like I'm a victim, I'm oppressed, and therefore I move up on the ladder of I'm more valuable in my conversation.
Right.
So if the identity politics people are dominating the conversation, they have to label us with one of those identities and then put it somewhere.
Right.
Because the only structure is that your political identity is for you to dominate others.
Right.
And I have no desire to dominate anybody.
Right.
Like, at all. So, like, I am a Republican because I believe in limited government and free people.
Yeah.
So that goes very much against what I believe. And so to call somebody a Christian nationalist is to say you want to be preferred as a Christian, you want preferential treatment, and you want to dominate. And it's like, well, no, I don't. That's not at all my political identity. But in identity politics, you have to dominate. All of these different identities are there to dominate the other, and you have to come in some order.
Yeah.
And so Christian nationalism is, the most reprehensible of all, and we should fear you, and we should attack you, and we should defend ourselves from you because it's a pie, and you're going to take a piece, and then I won't have anything. And it's like, I don't believe in any of that system. And yet I'm being defined by the system of the day. And that's very frustrating for Christians because they're like, I'm not in that. I'm not playing that game.
Right.
I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, where do I vote? I don't, you know what I mean? Like, and who and where, and you know what I mean? And so it's like, as somebody who's a Christian and in the political world, so I sort of know how people are being pigeonholed and labeled and where that fear is being stirred up. And it's like, no, you shouldn't have to go study the Constitution. However, it would be great that when you did watch the news, if you weren't just getting straight information, if you're going to get opinion, then you have to have people that can rightly articulate, I know what you're saying it in the means of political identity politics. We don't play that game.
Yeah.
So our effort is not going, if I say that I want a Christian nation, Richard Dawkins, the atheist, called himself a cultural Christian. Okay, if Richard Dawkins, probably the most famous atheist who bashes Christians all the time, says, well, if I have a choice,
Right.
I'm a cultural Christian because that framework enables me to be an atheist and talk about being a cultural Christian. That only exists in a Christian culture.
Right.
Where you are allowed to be anything you want to be. And I'm going to be respectful of you. But you're not going to tell me what I get to think or that my ideas are somehow wrong and evil and going to lead to violence. And it's like, well, based on what?
Right.
Yeah. So
I think that's interesting because what you said is that actually having Christian principles leads to the freedom for people to think and do what they want, right? Because
so far,
truthfully, God highly values free will.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So then
like he's in control, but he's not controlling.
Right.
And you can look at it in the life of Jesus.
No, he wants you to make choices.
He wants you to choose. It's free will. So look at Jesus. Jesus didn't come back and go, I'm in charge now.
Right.
Wipe them all out. Like, as a matter of fact, I think the disciples came and said, hey, they were rude to us. Let's wipe them all out.
He's like, let's not.
And he's like, get behind me, Satan.
Right.
Like, that's not my message. You're missing the point. Don't chop his ear off. You're missing the point. It could be hard. I could be sweating blood, but I don't want you to kill people for me. I'm here to die for you.
Right.
That's what leadership looks like. I'm here to die for you.
So then that would then translate to, as a believer, when I am engaging in politics and policies and things like that.
Yeah.
That is why it is not a good idea to try to overlay my morality onto politics or have politics legislate morality, because actually, as a believer, I should be fighting for people's freedom to choose.
Yeah, I think as a citizen, of course, your values, your morality, of course, you get to vote for that because that then guides policy. Everybody has morality. Everybody has a system of right and wrongs. Christians don't get excluded from that because they're Christian. So I don't necessarily want you to not do that.
Okay.
As the citizen, I want you to have your morals and values. I think if Christians understood the battleground of discussion and ideas has shifted from Republican Democrat to identity politics. If they understood that world, maybe they would articulate themselves differently, is all I mean. So
then how should we articulate ourselves?
yeah, so I mean, I would just say that if you believe in free will and you're a Christian and you're in the American system, you basically believe in the tenets of the Constitution.
Okay.
You don't have to say, like, it's a Christian nation. It is historically founded on Judeo-Christian values. There's no arguing that. We're not secular. We weren't the French Revolution. We are not Islamic. You know what I mean? Like, there are other options of what you can be, and we don't have a state religion. Like, we're not those things. We created our own system where your morality and religious rights were completely protected but not advanced, not preferred. So the very idea of, like, saying, like, "Oh, you're a Christian nation and you're a Christian nationalist," it's like, we already had Christians set up a government, and they didn't do that. They didn't set up a theocracy. They actually made whatever religion people wanted to be fully acceptable. There's no religious test to serve in government and to be in government and to make the very laws that affect communities and culture. So I reject this idea that it's a negative thing to say that, you know, oh, you want a Christian nation because you are a right wing and you know, believe in the Constitution. It's like, no, that's historical. Like, those are foundational tenets that actually observe and uphold the dignity and integrity of every person. So, no, you're not going to tell me it's wrong to believe that. But in identity politics, which is what we're in right now, that's the system we're arguing over. We're arguing over who is going to have the power to determine how we all live.
Yeah.
And I would say government should not be that far into everything that we're doing. And the only reason they can do that is because they're funding it. So if you remove the funding, you just remove the argument at the Capitol for what you do in your private life and what you do with, you know, your doctor. None of that becomes a public discussion until you use public funds to do it, right?
Okay, how does that happen? Or how does that work, though? You're
Well,
like, remove the funding. How
abortion.
do I remove the funding?
Well, you
Like,
vote against government-sanctioned paying for abortions.
Yeah.
So we want to defund Planned Parenthood. You want to make this not like something that is paid for by government funds. It's like, okay, so you have to delineate, like, what type of work. Like, there are people that are going to say, no, it's murder, which I agree, it is murder. We don't want to sanction that. We don't want to approve that. We certainly don't want to pay for it.
Right.
But it's not just that that it's approved. It is a state's issue because the federal government should have nothing to do with that. So it's a state issue, and the state and the community should decide if they want to do that, and they should vote on that. And then to take it further, the issue is that if the state basically says, no, this is what we want, then they will help pay for it. And that's the problem. I think that's where you cross into, you're violating everything by saying, not only do I agree with this or don't agree with this, but I'm going to your tax dollars, because you disagree with that.
Yeah.
So why should your tax dollars be paying for something that you disagree with wholeheartedly, goes against your religion, goes against all your values, and you are absolutely allowed to have that moral standing? You're not telling that other person they can or can't do that. You're saying, we're not sanctioning that and funding it.
Okay.
And these are all very nuanced conversations, but the fact is that nobody had a nuanced conversation. They just did it.
Right.
They did it. They did not do it legislatively. They did it from the bench. They said they're doing this, and then they started funding it. And that is not with the consent of the people. That is not with a rigorous debate. That is not with the technology that we have right now. The technology will show you it is not a lump of cells. Science will tell you that's a human being. So you have to make the decision not based on what somebody else determines that it is, but what science and our own observation is telling us what that is, and be consistent across the board. And at a minimum, our tax dollars should not be paying for that. At a minimum, you know. So these are the discussions that need to happen without the, oh, but you're this, and so I don't have to listen to you. Oh, but you're MAGA, so you're not even a human being. You're not even a citizen. You're just this other thing that has no reason, no conscience, you know, no understanding. You're just this thing that I don't have to listen to. And then we shoot that thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
It's like, it's super dangerous. Identity politics puts in there something that is not supported by our Constitution, but it has sort of, it's the prevailing conversation that Christians, for the most part, don't know they're having.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Right?
Well,
So
and that's the problem. Even though, as you are now helping me be aware of this, if the predominant conversation is identity politics, and I'm sitting here going, that's not me, but I've already been labeled something.
right.
How do I engage in that conversation when I've already been discredited?
Yeah, so if you're talking to somebody on the left, and they're like, "Are you a Christian nationalist?" And you'd be like, "Oh, define that for me. What do you think a Christian nationalist is?" And if they say, like, "You wanna enforce your morality on me," and, the question could be, "Well, what is your morality? Define morality.
Yeah.
What's your morality?" Because really, even in the Christian world,
Yeah.
which one? Which denomination are we talking about? You know
So
what I mean?
many, yes.
Like what exactly and that is even open for interpretation.
That's
Like
true.
nothing is that simple and simplistic.
Right.
That you're like, "Oh, it's just this." And of course, Christians are all the same. Yeah, no,
No.
we're
Yes.
not. However, I think the conversation needs to be elevated and it really needs to be discussed because number 1, it's being used as a slur
Yeah.
to dehumanize Christians and to fear them.
Mm.
It was funny. So I looked up well, we have Islamophobia and homophobia and xenophobia and anti-Semitism. I'm like, what about irrational fear of Christians?
Is there a word for
Is
it?
there a Christophobia or Christophobia?
Yeah.
Wikipedia doesn't even define it.
Hmm.
There's no definition for that.
Wow.
There's anti-Christian,
Sure.
but anti-Christian would be sort of like a pushback, like a defense. But Islamophobia is like, I have an irrational fear of you.
Yeah.
Like it's irrational, doesn't make any sense, and I'm discriminating against you out of this irrational fear. And I would say that the label of Christian nationalism is the most prime example of Christophobia or Christophobia. I don't even know how you would say it because I've never heard somebody
Are we
say it
coining a
before.
word?
No, it is a word.
It is? Okay.
Well, yes, it's a word. It's just not a word that's ever used. Because in identity politics, if you're a Christian, you already are preferred. You have special privileges. You're a supremacist, white supremacist. You're all these other things that basically you're the oppressor. The Christians are the oppressors. You're calling. Yeah, it logically falls apart. But why
I was
use
gonna say, that's
why use
not really
logic
true,
now?
yeah.
But if you take it out of that realm and you just talk about it being what phobias are, they are irrational fears and what we all denounce every single day of no, you need to treat that individual. If someone is Islamic, they're not all the same. So you need to treat that person individually and talk to them and see and not just have this irrational fear of anybody that's different than you or doesn't understand. And it's like, well, then apply that to Christians if you're an atheist or if you're any other thing that you think you have this irrational fear that they are going to take over you.
Yeah.
And they are and for some reason it basically gets turned on Christians that if they have a strong sense of identity as Christians, they're somehow should be feared. And it's like, really? Because that identity created the American system.
Right.
And it gives you the ability to have these opinions, to dissent, to argue, to develop whole theories and ideas, to go to school and have the government pay for you through all types of NGOs and aid and all that to come up with those ideas against them.
Yeah. Right.
Our government funds our opposition ideas.
Right.
Okay, only in America.
Only
Only in America.
Yes. Well, is there anything else I need to know about identity politics and Christian nationalism?
I would just say as Christians, I think there has been an onslaught of sort of attacks on in the identity polity spectrum. You're at the bottom, right? So you are the oppressor. That's the worst thing that you can be.
Right.
It's not cool to be a Christian. What's fascinating is all these young kids that rebellion is now being a Christian and going to church. And I've never seen more Christian rappers and singers. And you're like, Forrest Frank, what? You've just got all of these things happening where you're like, this is so interesting.
It is.
And they're wearing their beliefs on their shirts and they're talking about it. And it's just a very interesting turn of events where the counterculture is now Christian. It's just a very interesting thing. And people are not drinking as much, and all of this is influence. what it comes down to in politics is it is the currency of influence. And what is influencing policy? What is influencing the policymakers? And what is influencing what you see on the media and what you hear at the pulpit? I mean, look, in your lifetime, would you ever think that it would become a social phenomenon that if you don't talk about the assassination of somebody, you should leave your church? Like, that's a new one.
That's wild.
Right? And good or bad, whatever, that is not the discussion. The discussion is it's happening.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that, and the law has been changed that churches are now going to be allowed to endorse.
Really?
So, yes. So,
okay, so you say it's changed. What was the law before and what is it now?
Yeah, so the Johnson Amendment basically neutered the voice of churches. And
what year was that?
I think it was 1964.
Okay.
And it neutered their voice and for nonprofits to basically say, if you take government money, you can't endorse and have for candidates have this, you can't donate to them and you can't endorse them.
Why did it do that?
Well, because it didn't want, because you're getting a tax exempt status, you're getting a benefit of tax exemption. And so you shouldn't unduly then influence those people that go into office. Now, I would say that's a better argument for public sector unions, but we're not having that debate right now. That's a can of worms.
So that's what it was.
So that's what it was.
What
Before, up until 1964, you were allowed to do that. So since now, I think Trump, I want to say by executive order,
okay,
which is just temporary things. If the legislature is really meant to be doing these things, I don't know why the legislature doesn't just pass laws. We let agencies and presidents do all the work of Congress, which is probably why everybody hates Congress. So, because they just don't want to do their job. They want to stay in office. And so, which is a good reason for term limits. Anyway,
yeah.
So many things. So on the Johnson Act, the Johnson Act basically changed the rule. And it basically says that, and if you're a 501c3, if you're a nonprofit in your church, which is that, you can't endorse, you can't give money to candidates. And it very much changed the culture of talking about politics.
Right.
Because every Great Awakening happened because preachers were saying, hey, you have a right to this. This king can't tell you what to do because, the King of Kings is telling, that type of thing. We don't have to do it this way. We can do it a different way. And that was happening in the pulpits, because largely at the beginning, before we established ourselves as the United States of America, all of these states, and even when we did establish ourselves as the United States of America, those states all had state religions. Yeah. People were fleeing religious persecution, and so they came here. And they created these enclaves and colonies where you could actually practice your religion, and it would not be held against you. As a matter of fact, it actually bonded you to each other because you shared this religion. Now, when they were coming up to craft what the federal government was going to be, they didn't want a centralized government that would dictate what you were allowed to be. They wanted to protect religious freedom. They didn't want to protect their religious freedom to be Protestant or Quaker or whatever. They wanted to protect everybody's right. And even your right to have no religion. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
I would say that even people that are atheists still have morality. And they very much, the founders talk about that it needs to be a virtuous, this government is for a virtuous and moral people. Moral and religious are not the same.
Right.
Morality should be sort of those laws of nature and nature's God, and the Constitution talks about that, laws of nature and nature's God. So meaning just sort of the laws that are natural, that nobody has to tell you. And then there's sort of that civilized aspect of that 10 commandments that's okay, yes, you can, it's great to, have nice things, but don't covet your neighbor's things.
Right.
Don't kill them.
And
right?
Take their things?
And take their things. And their wife. Don't take that either. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. And don't do it in my name.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is taking the Lord's name in vain. It's not just cussing. It's it is basically saying, I'm doing this in the name of God. And it's an immoral thing. And it's not right. And you're not justified because you're a Christian.
So, circle back.
Yeah.
Johnson Act of 1964. It sounds like the heart behind that was to prevent, churches are tax exempt. So tax exempt, you don't get to influence.
Well,
politics. Am I understanding it?
I mean, that could be that is the consequence of it. But the reason why we give tax exempt statuses to churches and to these nonprofit organizations is because those institutions help people and society and culture to be better people and to do charitable things. So, as a government, if I don't want to create a hospital because that's a terrible thing for the government to do. We're just not efficient. It's going to cost too much. It's too far removed from the customer and the payee, right? So, like, it's just too far removed. So it's like, what would be better is if the community did that, if that was private enterprise, or the people that care the most, the churches. So you have a lot of Catholic hospitals. You had a lot of Jewish hospitals. Those things were established long ago because you have tax exempt status. It's not for profit.
Yeah.
It's for public gain. It's for in service of the community. And so if I tax exempt you, it encourages you because this is what laws do. They can either encourage behavior, discourage behavior, or just stay the heck out of the free market, okay? Just get out of the way. Don't do anything at all, which I really wish California would take more of the get out of our way.
Yes.
Like, let it just happen. So
you have a nonprofit, like a church,
right, because
that serves.
Yeah, so we're not going to tax them because they're doing a public good.
But we also don't want them to then have, I don't know.
No.
Influence is too strong a word, but like,
well, that was the
where maybe the heart was like, you're serving me, so maybe I owe you something and I should do what you tell me and think along
If that's
those
true,
lines.
then they would have also ended public sector unions because a union collects money, gives it to politicians, endorses politicians, and those politicians decide how much money they make.
Okay.
So that is the most direct form of quid pro quo that you could possibly have. So if the heart behind it was to remove influence, why do they have the right to do that based on a benefit, financial benefit, if these unions are having financial benefit from giving money and endorsing candidates? So if you're going to do that, you're going to have to make it consistent across the board.
Agreed.
And,
they're changing it now.
Businesses also have get tax advantages based on doing certain behaviors. So
what is the new? Like, how has it changed?
They're going to be allowed to endorse. They still can't give money, but they can endorse. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there are churches that do that.
Yeah,
and
they have for a long time.
For a very long time, and they have no fear of that. But other churches will get letters. They will get stuff from the IRS saying you better not do this. And I think that that's a challenge for the Supreme Court. And because there hasn't been that challenge, maybe this is a temporary thing. The legislature really needs to take this up if it's really going to change. But for right now, what it does, in my opinion, is it calls on the carpet all these Christians and these churches that have basically said, "Oh, I can't. By law, I can't do it." And so this is really going to be very confrontational. And where do you stand? And fascinating that this issue with Charlie Kirk has come up because it's sort of like, I would say we're seeing right now this debate sort of happen is how much politics you're going to bring into the church. And I've seen other people argue politics is already in the church. It's all over the church. It's everywhere because so many laws are now being passed. We've gotten so deep into the control of government on every single level that it's like you can't even avoid politics anymore because they keep telling us we have to do something different all the time. They keep changing the rules. They're changing society before it's something that we all do. Yeah. And so it's like it's disruptive. Yeah. And so it's like, well, I guess I do have to figure this out. Oh, there's another election. There's another thing. Like, why is that happening? And is this true that there's this new law and they're going to be able to, and you're like, yeah, yes, yes, yes. And the people that have been, quietly talking about it, quietly getting involved and then getting louder and louder and louder are now screaming. Yeah. And so you're like, okay, let me direct they're screaming. You know what I mean? Yes, and you're like, sure, I'm a Christian nationalist. They're like, no, you're not. You just like, you're like, oh, so like, okay, I am, I'm not. You're just like, this is a lot. This is a lot. And you guys are like, everything is really high stakes. Like everybody's really amped up all the time.
It's very high stakes.
Right? And so you're like, oh, I don't want to be,
Which is exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
So break it down for us. You're the elected official.
Yeah.
I'm a citizen.
Yeah.
How do we respond? Like, how do you, as somebody who is elected, function in this? How do I?
Yeah, I think I'm guided by principles, economic principles, because again, what came with this new American system was a totally different economy. And like anything that happens, especially at the state level, it's by consent. We give up our rights every time we pass a new law. We give it up because it's our right until we let the government control it. And then it becomes an institutional system that has taken our rights away. And people need to start thinking that every law that is passed is an abdication of your rights.
Wow.
You are giving the government control over another aspect of your life. And in California, with 400,000 laws, it's why people are fleeing. It's why they're leaving.
Yeah.
It's because it's like, I don't want to be micromanaged.
Right.
I don't want, hello, I've been here my whole life. Why are you telling me where I can go, how I can get there, how much I got to pay in gas? Now I got to have vehicle miles traveled. Now you have a regulation. I mean, people with trucks are like, my husband's in the car business, and so it's like they're taking cars out of California, perfectly great cars and trucks that work, and they've got to go sell them in other states, and they're like, sweet,
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Oh, I could tell you
And they're
stories.
losing money because it's like a different market there, but it's like there's nothing else to do with these perfectly good vehicles that the government has now said, nope, you're going to have to spend 2, 3, 400,000 in current inflationary prices. You can't just fix your vehicle.
Oh, this is so true. Like, we came from out of state.
Yeah.
We're not Californian.
Yeah.
And I just
It's
can't even go
wild.
into the fees and the things that are almost make it unlivable.
It does, and it makes it undesirable, and it makes it not fun, and
Right.
and in a state that literally has every cool thing imaginable. You've got lakes, you've got beaches, you've got mountains, you've got snowboarding, you've got skiing, like, whatever you want to do, you could do it within the state.
Right.
And they're making it, like, just miserable.
They are.
To that people are leaving
Oh, yeah.
sunny California.
Yeah.
Like, how miserable do you have to make it for people that they move? Because moving sucks,
Well, yeah, the
right?
geography's not better elsewhere, but
It's not.
but
It's
the
not.
laws are.
Yeah, the laws are. And so that's
So-
the thing. So what can electeds do? Stop passing laws, remove like we talk about regulations, people have the best of intentions. They think regulations are just there to like make bad guys good. And you're like, no, it's literally to micromanage your life. And if you don't realize it's a micromanaging of your life and to fee you to death, then you don't even you've again defined regulations by somebody else's definition and not the reality of what it is.
So then, as a citizen, do I just always vote no?
Yes. I'm gonna go with maybe. Yeah, maybe. I think there's a lot that needs to happen, and it's kind of like if you haven't worked out for 20 years and then you're like, I want to go do CrossFit, right? If you go to CrossFit after not working out for 20 years and you're like, but I'm an athlete and I played in high school. It's like, that's great. But like, you're going to go in there and you're going to see what other people are doing. And if you compare yourself to them, you're going to leave after that first day when you wake up the next day and your body hurts in every single place. You're going to like, I broke something, right? It's broken. It's like, no, it's not broken. It just hasn't been used in a while. And if you go to compare, then it's going to feel impossible. And so I think we have to set some goals for ourselves. So if you've never voted, you should probably vote. If you basically say, I wish that Jesus would just come back, and that's your political plan, it's like,
hide out.
Jesus, come back. You're like, that's also not going to work. So maybe just be like, okay, I'm going to read the voter guide. In California, we're voting on something right now. There's 2 measures. Go do some research on those. Maybe you've never done maybe you only read the piece of paper that it comes with that stuff. Maybe this time, go online. Maybe go ask a neighbor. Just do something you hadn't done before to just baby step yourself into something different. You're right. You're not going to be an activist. You're not going to make a website.
Right.
You're not going to post on everybody's posts. You're not going to make arguments. You're not going to go riot in the streets. You're not going to hold up a sign. You're not going to do any of that. But maybe just go Google search, like, what are they, what's the opposition? Who's saying no on Measure A? Whatever. Like, go figure that out. Like, what is gerrymandering? Like, what are you talking about? Like, Jerry Brown? Like, who are we talking about? You know what I mean?
Is this a person?
So, is this, yeah, like, who's this Mander guy? Yeah, who's this Jerry guy? Like, maybe just go do a little bit of research, and maybe it doesn't get you any further, but it is, like, sort of breaking this cognitive dissonance of like, it's never going to get better. Jesus has to come back. It's, yes, I'm, whatever.
If I am Googling these things,
Yeah.
can I trust what's coming up to actually be presenting both sides?
No, but I don't know that you should. I think it's just you could Google what's the definition.
Okay.
I think that's super helpful. And then you can see who's talking about it. So if you're like, oh, these are none of the people that I know. So then maybe you can go like, okay, well, I listened to Charlie Kirk. I liked Charlie Kirk. Let me Google Charlie Kirk and Christian nationalism and see what he said.
Mm.
And I'm sure he's going to say many things because it's not
Right.
a term that came up from, and it's not an actual group, and it's not being defined by the people they're labeling.
Right.
They didn't come up with that. This is a slur and a way that they labeled other people that are different than them that they want to diminish. Right. And so you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? And see what he says about it and be like, I don't know. I agree with that. I don't agree with this. But maybe that actually sparks a conversation, or maybe you see commentary of someone saying, this is why I agree. I don't agree. And you're like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And the fact is that we are very, very smart. We are smarter than they give us credit for.
For sure.
And we're smarter than they have communicated to us. And so what they don't want you to do is to go look it up and to really start actually listening to the argument. Why do you have to shoot Charlie Kirk for talking? Because he's making good arguments that is actually causing people to think. And what makes them hate him? Oh, he said to stone people. No, he never said that. Yeah. Right? And so you're like, okay, so the things that you are saying discredit him. He didn't say. So that is not a good reason to not listen to him. However, it's a powerful way to not listen to him. Yeah. Is you make that accusation. And so I do think that like we're smart enough. If you go look and you just start seeing, you just Google those terms and just so much information is readily available. And if it sounds like, I mean, I don't want to dominate over people.
Right.
I don't want to be treated preferentially because I'm a Christian, but I also don't want to be discriminated against. And they're like, oh, there's no such thing as discrimination against the power structure. You're like, says who? Because it feels exactly the same.
It does.
Like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're misrepresenting me. You're telling me I believe things I don't and all of those types of things. So I think as a citizen, try to do something, just go to the gym, right? Just don't even join yet. Just go, just like be like, I'm just going to go and I'm going to try and I'm going to jog and I'm going to ask for modifications, whatever you need to do. But it's like, if we compare, if we say that it has to be this way, we'll just stay out of it. But it doesn't. It really can be just a matter of, I'm going to Google those terms and find out what that definition is. And when you're like, Christian nationalism, I prefer Christianity over other people. What? No, I don't. And I would never do that. Yeah. That's like the antithesis, right? But what you're feeling is, well, but I want to be recognized that there's value in being a Christian because this greatest country in the world was founded on Judeo-Christian values. So there is a value for me here. You can't just relegate me out and say that I'm an oppressor and I'm terrible and the founders were racist and homophobic and they're horrible. It's like, hold on. So there's a reaction to what they've been attacked for. There's just like, it's just a natural thing. But in defining your own identity, we don't say that your opposition gets to define you. We believe in self-identification. I believe that's their argument of why we should all call them by their pronouns because they self-identify. Well, then why would they then say to me, I don't get to self-identify who I am and define it in my terms? Why do you get to define what a Christian is in politics and what a Republican is and a right-winger? Why do you get to decide and not me, who's actually living in this and knows what I identify with? So it's an interesting, we're so progressive. We've like come all the way back around to like some of the things that have already been argued many, many times before, but worth us engaging again, because I think social media and our phones and all of these things have sort of pulled us back. And what we do get attention on a lot of times is very disorienting and not a full picture. And we don't just get information anymore. We get every bit of information.
Oh, for sure.
So then now wisdom is even more important than ever before. And having those voices that are making the argument, and you watch them all. Watch all those people, see what they say. There's people that don't like each other, and they're all labeled Christian nationalists. You're like, how? They have totally opposing views. They argue like, what? Oh, you're putting them all in there? You know what I mean? So it's like it's fascinating. And then as an elected, I think the most important thing is I have my why for whatever it is that I'm doing, and I can explain the influence and my goals for the decisions that I'm making and the position that I'm at, and I'm open to listening to other people and what they say that things are, and I always am studying history.
That's good.
Otherwise, I'm doomed to repeat it.